Hi, I'm Ben.
I'm Stefan.
Well, what's the funny thing I could say instead of my name? I'll think of something.
Animating in threes.
So we're three guys who analyze an animated film or television series from an animator's perspective. And today, Michael is going to present
Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Take it away.
No, but before we get into that, make sure to look at the time codes below to make sure you can skip to whatever segment of the podcast you want to.
Again, no news today. It's all cancelled. Everything's cancelled. All right, today we're doing Into the Spiderverse.
Whoa!
The first Spider-Man film that feels like a Spider-Man film in 14 years. I feel, in my opinion.
Okay.
So, Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. You probably saw it if you're listening to this podcast. It's a 2018 computer-animated superhero film that was produced by Columbia Pictures and Sony Pictures Animation in association with Marvel. So it's distributed by Sony Pictures, and it's the first animated feature film in the Spider-Man franchise, funnily enough, despite having a long history in animated television series. Who could forget such classics as Spider-Man, the Spectacular Spider-Man, and probably another show called Spider-Man.
Disney XD's Spider-Man, which is apparently not that great.
Yeah,
according to Twitter.
they cancelled like a much better show apparently.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we did an episode on Spectacular Spider-Man.
And there's also one with Neil Patrick Harris as Spider-Man. It was 3D.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Does he sing like show tunes?
I hope so. That would be great.
It's just Spider-Man introduces the Emmys.
Because
But it was a musical.
What?
Yeah. Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark.
Oh yeah. So but that's got nothing to do with the animated
I think that's
one.
literally the worst named musical in the history of musical theatre.
I know why it's called Turn Off the Dark.
Why?
It's because one of the producers, their kid used to say Turn Off the Dark when he wanted his parents to turn the lights on.
It doesn't mean you name a multi-million-dollar musical production after it.
No, because I'm a podcast I listened to recently did a whole episode
Kids
about
like
that.
yell "Wipe my ass."
Yeah,
Like you
imagine if it was
you don't
called
name your musical after that.
Spider-Man, Wipe My Ass.
Wipe my ass. It was the working title of Cats. No, Cats was like, I'm going to rub my ass on your keyboard. The film was directed by Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman. It is produced by Avi Arad, the man who irreparably damaged Spider-Man 3 and the Spider-Man franchise in general. Amy Pascal, Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, and Christina Steinberg. Christina Steinberg is the only one without a Wikipedia page, so I don't know anything about her.
But Phil Lord and Chris Miller, they are some of my favourite filmmakers working today because they...
Well, we're just working in animation and like meta humor.
Exactly, but they do it in a way that I feel works the best. Like compared to what we were talking about before.
Lego Movie?
No, another one. The Scooby-Doo trailer.
Oh,
That's right. Scoob, how there's a lot of meta humor, but it's going to be very dated. I feel that Lord and Miller do that.
It's more
but
like...
in a really good way that won't date.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, we're not here to talk
We're
about
talking
that.
about Spider.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's keep going. Screenplay by Phil Lord and Rodney Rothman. Story by Phil Lord. So, in terms of the casting, the film stars Shamik Moore as Miles Morales, Jake Johnson, who you might know from New Girl, and who could forget mega comedy hit Let's Be Cops as Peter Parker, Haley Steinfeld as Gwen Stacy.
From Bumblebee. She's in Bumblebee.
Is she? Oh, is she the protagonist?
Yeah.
I thought she was
Okay.
Bumblebee.
No.
John Mulaney as Peter Porker, or the Spectacular
That's
Spider-Man.
right! Oh, we'll talk about it later. Okay.
Did you not pick up?
No, because in the lead up to the film, Stefan hated Spider-Ham and didn't want to watch the film because Spider-Ham was in it.
Spider-Ham.
And
Why?
in the end,
He's
you ended
good.
up liking him in the
Yeah,
film.
He's alright.
Because he's well, like they're quite modestly utilized
Yes.
throughout the screenplay. They're not in it very much. Kimiko Glenn as Penny Parker and Nicolas Cage as Peter Parker or Spider-Man Noir.
Amazing.
It's basically a soft animated adaptation of Spider-Verse, which was a 2014, I think, story arc in Marvel Comics where a bunch of different Spider-Men from alternate universes band together to stop a race of vampiric interdimensional beings who have come to feed off totemistic Spider-Men throughout the multiverse in order to extend their life energy.
Yep, but also an adaptation of the, I think, Ultimate Universe of Spider-Man. with
Yeah,
Miles
Spider-Man
Morales?
Ultimate, the
Yeah.
Miles Morales origin.
Yeah. It's a mixture of the Ultimate Universe Miles Morales origin plus elements, and I use that term very loosely.
It's very good with it adapts it perfectly. It just gets rid of the vampires,
gets-
all the universes, everything, Doc Ock, all that.
See, I think it just takes the core element, and that's it.
of,
and the name.
of multiverse. Yeah.
They take the name and the core element, scrap everything else.
Yeah. It basically follows the origin of Miles Morales coming to terms with, being Spider-Man and taking up a mantle after the Peter Parker from his universe is killed. He bands together with Spider-Man from alternate dimensions and tries to get them home. The production history of Into the Spiderverse. Like every major news stories of the past stupid decade, it starts with leaked emails. So our story begins in the magical time of November 2014. Back when bloody Gangnam Style was 2 years old. Well, anyway, so following that hacking of Sony's computers, emails between Sony Pictures Entertainment co-chairman Amy Pascal back then and Doug Belgren were released, and they basically outlined plans to rejuvenate the Spider-Man franchise with an animated comedy film where Phil Lord and Chris Miller were revealed to be in talks. At the 2015 CinemaCon in April, Tom Rothman, who was a Sony Pictures chairman, announced that the animated Spider-Man film, then Untitled, had a July 20, 2018 release date and would be produced by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, Avi Arad, Matt Tolmach, and Amy Pascal. Lord and Miller were announced as writing the treatment of the film at that date. The script is credited to Phil Lord and Rodney Rothman from a story by Lord, so it technically makes it the first film that Lord wrote without a Christopher Miller credit.
Yes. I think, is that got to do with the Screenwriters Guild?
I don't know, actually.
Because I feel like there's a lot
You've got
of
to have an
issues with
independent screenplay in order to qualify for the Screenwriters Guild.
or something like that, yeah. Like, for example, George Lucas was kicked out of the something academy
Because he's a bad screenwriter?
No, because he didn't put any of the credits at the beginning.
I didn't know that.
The Star Wars films, they don't have any credits.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
That's part of the charm of those films, but also he's a bad screenwriter.
Yes, he is. With dialogue at
which should almost more than disqualify him for the Screenwriters Guild.
He's bad at dialogue, but his concepts and stuff great. Anyway,
He's
we're not
good
here
at
to
weird
talk
concepts.
about...
He's
We're
just
not here
never...
to talk about George Lucas.
I just want to say, he's never heard another human being speak, and that's his problem. He seems like a nice dude, though. Remember when he was in that Adelaide KFC?
I thought it was a food court.
Oh, whatever. Yeah. Production team decided that the story needed to be told about Miles Morales. It's a little bit different. It's a new kind of contemporary story with characters of different ethnicities,
which
has
is
a heavy
great,
emphasis on it.
especially since the MCU was doing another Peter Parker as well. So you just need that difference, because otherwise it's bombarded with just the same character over and over and over
And Miles Morales is an interesting character, albeit one with like kind of weird superpowers
Yes.
that are kind of pointless, I think, in the film. But
In
anyway,
the film, they're not pointless. It's just...
they're not pointless. I think some of them are odd.
They're not spider-like.
But Miles Morales, great character. Good on you, Bendis. Anyway, so Brian Michael Bendis, who I just mentioned, the co-creator of Miles Morales, who you might know wrote the entire run of Ultimate Spider-Man over a period of something
That's
like
how
12
I know
or
his
13
name.
years.
Okay.
He served as a consultant on the film adaptation of the character. So, animation and design, the bit we all want to know about, because the film is an experience. So the animation was handled almost solely by Sony Pictures Imageworks, who had previously handled all Sony Pictures animation, so all prior releases.
Which a lot were done by Lord and Miller. We have, like, the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
Oh, I didn't know that was them. That makes
you
sense, actually, in retrospect. The Sony Pictures Imageworks also handled a lot of the visual effects for the prior Sony-released Spider-Man films. The producers, during early production, felt like they wanted the feeling that the viewer had walked inside a comic book.
Yes.
Which I'd say they achieved. Again, we talked about it this last week, but the sensory experience is just completely revolutionary, I think.
It's a few weeks ago we talked about NPR, which is non-photorealistic rendering. This, I don't know if it was. It just depends on was the comic book process pre-rendered? Okay, you go on about it. So we'll find out.
I have a bit about it. I might not explain it with any depth, detail, or competence, but it's there.
But if you get into it, I'll be able to tell.
I'll tell you by the end. But anyway. So, in terms of initial conceptualization, during initial production, it took 2 years for the team of animators to create 10 seconds of footage that reflected the producer's vision. So for them to finalize their animation style.
that makes sense.
That's a long time.
But it's good, though, that they actually took their time to do this.
Yeah, as
Rather
opposed to
than-
rushing it out.
Exactly.
By August 2018 of the animation production schedule, 142 animators were working for Sony Pictures Imageworks.
Can I
Is
also...
that a large amount? I don't know.
It's a reasonably large amount.
Okay.
was this made alongside the Emoji Movie? Because I want to really work out
It
how
would have to
something
be.
that produced crap could produce something so good.
Not just crap, but Patrick Stewart as crap.
As crap.
Patrick Stewart as crap.
At one point during production, they actually peaked at 177 animators.
Okay.
The largest animation... So, like you're saying, is that a large animation crew? It was the largest animation crew that Sony Pictures Imageworks had ever utilised for a film production.
Now, was
100
it specifically animators or animators and
Animation crew.
model?
It was just an entire animation crew.
Okay, cool.
Look, you need it because there
Yeah.
is so many different... There's so many different things going on in this film,
Yes, there
both
is.
with 2D elements, 3D elements, visual effects elements. It's got everything.
And they worked right up until the deadline, basically. The animation work was completed in October of 2018, and the film saw a release in December.
Whoa, okay.
And you got to remember, this film was initially slated for release in July.
Yeah.
In producer interviews, the CGI animation was combined with, quote, line work and painting and dots and all sorts of comic book techniques to make it look like it was, created organically and by hand, which was described as a living painting. It was achieved by artists taking rendered frames from the CGI animators and working on top of them in 2D.
Okay, so that answers my question. So this isn't...
It's not a solely 3D animated film.
And also it isn't
NPR.
NPR rendering, which is... So it did get rendered somewhat realistically in the render engine, and it was a post-process that made it look like the comic book movie we see today.
Yeah, if you watch it on Blu-ray like I did, you can see the different passes of
Yes.
the film that they have. And the just basic 3D render, it's not lifeless, it's still energetic and kinetic. But it's missing that oomph.
Yeah.
That style, that kind of retro aesthetic.
There was a trailer for Lord and Miller's next animated film for Sony called Connected. So that came out about a family going on a road trip and then robots attack.
That trailer I was enjoying until halfway through when it becomes a different film.
Yes, but I will say I feel like they learnt from this film and applied it to Connected because of the very different rendered style in it, and I felt like it definitely built off Into the Spiderverse. And I'm really glad that Sony's getting their own aesthetic away from traditional, the Disney sort of style.
They need to look sillier, I
Yes.
feel. They need to look more... Take a lesson from Brad Bird. Make them look more like Brad Bird Productions.
Which is what they've done. So I'm really glad about it. Anyway, let's get back to Into the Spiderverse.
So yeah, obviously the goal was to create something that looked like a living comic book, particularly older comic books. The animation, instead of using traditional motion blur, as is usually the norm in traditional 3D productions, or at least modern 3D productions, they use motion smearing,
Yes.
which is real old school, and they actually added smear frames by
in
hand.
2D or in 3D?
I don't
the
have it
smears.
here, but I presume with 2D elements that it would be 2D motion smears.
That'd be pretty
We also
cool.
talk about this next week on our next week's podcast as well.
So the frame rate, the film has a varying frame rate, and it bounces between 24 frames a second. So animating on ones to get a real kind of smooth.
Yeah, the cinematic approach.
Yeah. More kind of smooth and lifelike, to animating on twos, 12 frames a second, which is a little bit
Yes.
more.
Cartoony, jagged.
Yeah.
Very. It's good for fights.
Yeah. And it almost when you're moving fast enough, it's like a comic book. You're getting
Yeah.
just the keyframes at certain points, which is exactly how panels are developed.
It makes hits. The thing about animating on 2 is if you want to make a punch, it makes a punch hit hard.
Yeah, it's always the difference between, again, Disney and Warner Brothers. Disney is 24 frames and Warner Brothers is 12. And Warner Brothers is a little bit more jazzy, a little bit more punchy. But Disney is more balletic and elegant.
See, it's things like these. I wish Disney just went out there a bit more to be more experimental.
So the film also features techniques such as deliberately misaligned colours as to simulate misprinting
Yes.
comic book panels, which also was utilised to simulate depth of field.
Yes, I definitely noticed that.
Okay, that was a problem that I knew that some people had with the film, in that
It's a little
some
bit
things looked
disorienting
a
at
bit
points.
blurry at times.
I love that.
I love it too, but
Yeah, but
it's
I can see why people would have a problem with it.
Whenever I go on like internet forums and like for video games, I always see people like always complain about blur in video games. Like when there's like a blur filter applied over the graphics engines. I love that.
Same.
I think it gives the picture a cohesion, and I think it's more immersive than like just seeing every little minute detail in the scenery. Which is why I like this. It kind of pulls the picture together, I think, by giving everything this unified aesthetic overlay.
Also, it just adds, like, makes it a bit more realistic in a sense by, like, trying to emulate an actual lens.
Yeah.
But,
it also
like,
includes a lot of Ben-Day dots. Yeah, so there's a lot of that to simulate gradients and colours. A lot of crisscross lines. Again, another technique of like comic inking. And a little bit of Kirby crackle in a lot of the like the multiverse cosmic scenes. Kirby crackle was an artistic staple of comic artist Jack Kirby, who like really spearheaded a lot of like the Marvel cosmology stuff. And his huge thing was like, well, one of the identifying features of his cosmic drawings was like morphing energy balls.
Yes.
So like in this though, that gate, the multiverse
Exactly
beam,
that.
Multiverse
Exactly
gate.
that.
How did he do that on paper though?
Because there's
in
going to be
this-
another segment of Michael passes his phone around and the audience has no frame of reference. For
Don't you
what
have
we're
a
looking
theme
at.
for this? What was the theme for that you
We
made?
did, yeah, you got to send me the theme, Stefan, so I can put it in.
Oh, that was only about Ben though. You're not Ben.
Oh, who cares? We'll just scream Michael over it.
That's an example of Kirby Crackle.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have seen it, but I'm also
It's
gonna
like
take a
ink
look.
blodgers to
Yeah.
simulate like kind of cosmic energy.
It looks exactly like that in this movie.
For those of you at home, Google Kirby Crackle. So yeah, the film does an incredibly good job at simulating and adding kinetic movement to once kind of static imagery.
It
Well,
adds
iconic static
kinetic
imagery.
movement to everything and anything. Every movement is dramatic in this. A character could be sweating, and that sweating looks dramatic.
Basically, even the expository scenes are completely engaging because of the animation. It also utilizes speech boxes and onomatopoeia. You know, like
Yes.
a comic book, and again, reminiscent of the 1960s Batman television series.
And I'm guessing and they also had motion lines as well. So like if someone tapped on a door, there would be these lines that came off. So I'm guessing all that was 2D post processing. Yeah.
I think the onomatopoeia, I'm guessing the...
Smash, bang.
Yeah, that worked really beautifully in this film because most of the time you couldn't actually tell it was happening, and they even use it story-wise, like when Miles falls from a building and it's him like screaming "ah," and then
that's
at the
one of my
very end when
favourite
he's
parts.
rising with his webs, it's him going "woo." Like
I
it's
feel
even got a
like-
storytelling element, which is awesome.
Yeah, like it's got that arc.
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't utilize that enough towards the end. However, I can understand it from like a character point of view where he's learning and he's trying to cope with it at the beginning, so that's why there's so much of it.
Also, hats
then
off. Oh, sorry.
And then he like as he controls his powers, it dulls down all that onomatopoeia and stuff.
So yeah, the film was released on December 14th, 2018 in the United States, and on a budget of $90 million, it made $375.5 million back. So
That's good.
that's pretty good for an animated feature that don't tend... Well,
I would say that's a standard animated feature intake. Because
'Cause,
like,
like-
I know Frozen and Minions that gets over $1 billion, but like for a standard animation feature, especially something this risky because it is very out there.
so I shouldn't say for an animated feature because they make a lot of money. I'd say for like something as unique as this to make that much money back.
I'll
I
give you
think.
that. Yeah,
And fair enough, it does have like given it does have the Spider-Man IP behind it,
it should have gotten.
but
a
I
bit
feel like
more,
it should have
but
made more.
It definitely should have.
Yeah. But I remember seeing advertisements for it. I remember thinking, I'm not sure why I was thinking this, but I remember thinking it seemed weird for a cinematic release because I didn't feel like it would make money. And I'm not sure why because like all the elements are there.
Yeah, and like everyone who I know has seen it, they all really love it. So I feel like
Yeah.
it would have gotten that good word of mouth.
Like I think kids would adore this as well. Like it's just so energetic, and I think this just kind of captivates you the entire time because it's so energetic
And
it's
even
so
all
over
the,
top.
as you said, all the expository scenes, even those are moving in a unique way. They all have an interesting direction. It's not like there's static just for 5
Even when it
minutes.
slows, it's captivating. On January 31st, 2019, the film surpassed Hotel Transylvania 2, and it became Sony Pictures' highest grossing film domestically.
Yeah, sadly not worldwide.
So, in terms of critical response, it has a 97% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It's an aggregate, doesn't mean anything, but still. And I think a Metacritic average of 8.77 out of 10. Again, universal critical acclaim across the board. It won Best Animated Feature.
It did. And I think that's the first black director to get a Oscar.
There are multiple directors, though.
I know, but I think he was the main one.
Oh, okay. Well,
don't quote me on that.
There you go. I didn't pick up on that production notes, but that's a positive thing. The film also received a lot of celebrity praise from Tom Holland, Chris Pratt, Patton Oswalt, and Kevin Smith, who loves everything and unsurprisingly also enjoyed this film. Like a little bit of a kind of tack on at the end, but there is a sequel in production that will continue the story of Miles Morales, and the sequel was officially announced on November 1st, 2019, slated for an April 8th, 2022 release. So they're giving it a lot of breathing room, which is good.
Yes.
I guess
4 years, almost 3.5 years, which I feel like is a good.
Yeah. You're given ample production time in order to refine your product, basically.
But like it's
At
enough.
least-
It's not enough time to get interest from people, but it's not too far ahead.
Yeah.
That it's gonna people won't be that interested in it anymore.
No, I think people like. I think if we keep going this route of just in terms of, I guess, specifically talking about superhero media, but if studios are just kind of hell bent on releasing kind of homogenized superhero media for the next couple of years, and this is going to be the cinematic landscape that we live in, I think this will be another little breath of fresh air.
Yes.
Down the line, because I'm getting burnt out on it, man.
I
It's
am.
getting difficult.
Like I'm not even that excited for Black Widow.
Well, they might delay it now because people are bloody dropping like flies around the world. So, the sequel will continue Miles Morales' story, slated for a 2022 release date. In addition to Phil Lord and Miller, slated to return in some capacity at least, the film has also been confirmed to feature Takuya Yamashiro, who was the main character of the Japanese Spider-Man series from the late 1970s.
So is he actually going to be in it, or was it
goodness.
just concept art?
It's concept art, so I think it's just very highly regarded speculation.
Yes,
think.
it is. Like
But-
he might just be in like a background scene for all we know.
That would be funny, though. I hope
would
there's
be.
lots of Spider-Man. Actually, that's my one thing. I wish the films explored universes that we've already seen. I think would be a lot of fun.
We'll get into that.
Uh,
Okay.
So, we don't have a lot of time. So, thoughts on Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse?
It's probably the best Spider-Man film.
Probably. I still have a soft spot for Spider-Man 2, like literally everybody who has a pop culture podcast.
That was my favorite film for a while.
It's still great. I watched
It
the
is.
first Raimi one the other day. They're weird, and they exist in this weird reality where every extra overacts for some reason. And it's kind of the 1960s, but it's also very obviously 2001. But they're a lot of fun, and they're unique. And again, what film are we talking about? We
Into
should
the
probably talk about the one we
Spider-Verse.
were meant to.
No, I thought like all the characters were really well developed. Even like say Spider-Ham, where you only see him for 5 to 10 minutes in the film, still a really well developed character.
John Mulaney's a good performance, even though it's a
all-
little bit
all the
distracting because he just
performances-
sounds like John Mulaney.
All the performances were really good as well. And for some reason, all the Spider-Men, despite them having very distinct voices, they were all, I think, really well suited for their characters. And they all sound like, they definitely do sound like a Spider-Man or a Spider-Person.
Yeah, I wouldn't have picked Nicolas Cage as a Spider-Man in a while, but he makes it work.
Yeah, he really does. And like, say you have, for the end credits, you have Oscar Isaac as Spider-Man Nova. What is his name?
29.9, I forgot what his name
Yeah.
is. Miguel.
Oh yeah,
Oh, Miguel O'Hara, yeah.
yeah. Like, but he sounds like one of the Spider-Men that could easily fit in with the rest of the movie as
Oh
well.
yeah, I think that's why they got Oscar Isaac to
Yeah.
voice him. It's because I think there's interest for that character in a sequel.
But no, like all the Spider-Man voice acting, really well done, I thought, and all the action is just so punchy and it's very energetic and kinetic, and it's definitely not a bore watching this.
It also kind of respects its audience in the sense that it just expects you to know how multiverses work.
Yeah, it doesn't over-explain anything.
Yeah, it doesn't really like it's simply conveyed, but it's not over-explained or explained in a condescending way. Even though it's a film, again, it's intended primarily for kids. It basically just says like, yeah, it's a sci-fi concept. There's a multiverse. There's multiple variations of Spider-Man across parallel dimensions, and then it kind of has fun with that. And I really like that. I think all the emotional scenes hit really well. Because the animation is so revolutionary and so hard to do and so difficult to render. It's almost an airtight script.
Yes,
It's
it would have to be.
It's Yeah, it's just completely like efficient to a fault, and there's not a second of wasted time or space.
And all the jokes pretty much all land.
Every
as well.
joke that has obviously worked in the writer's room and worked in screen tests, it's all in there. Everything has been absolutely just chiseled down and refined to like this high shine. Funnily enough, I had seen the original cut in theaters. For this rewatch, I watched the extended cut, which is an assembly cut of the film on the Blu-ray. The assembly cut, the assembly cut is very long. It adds about half an hour.
Really?
Something like that of extra footage.
So it's 2.5 hours
Oh, is that
long.
what that option
All
was?
unfinished footage. It's all storyboards.
Okay.
Wait, with the movie? So you see the movie and then it turns into storyboard?
Yeah, it'll cut
Does
to
it
a
still have
storyboard
like
for
the
that.
music though and stuff?
Yeah, it's all it's all edited with sound effects. It's
Well,
just that
that's
the storyboards are obviously incomplete.
But it's not just about being Spider-Man, about being his own person
Yeah,
as well.
it's just like do your thing.
And it's something that's really good about this film, that it immediately sets up all those themes with the great expectations essay he's meant to write as well.
There is,
Oh damn! I didn't even catch that.
there's so many cyclical things, both visual.
Yes.
Phil Lord and Chris, those
Yeah,
directors,
Lord and Miller.
they just love doing little cyclical things everywhere in their films. Where you even the littlest, like again with the onomatopoeia, with the R and then the woo, everything has a little square bracket. That's why when you said it's such an airtight script, it is. It's one of the best animation scripts because not even are the dialogue and everything capsulated and bookended, but even the visuals all have a bookend. Everything has a place. Everything has a reason.
And it's it's fantastic. Also, every character is a unique interpretation while still being true to the ethos of that character.
Like Aunt May, for example. Like, she knows about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yet she's still that very caring,
She's still Aunt May.
endearing woman. Yeah.
It still reveres her character. The Peter Parker, who's kind of a washed-up slob, is still... You can see that youthful energy in him. In there. He's still Peter.
I love how each Peter Parker Spider-Man calls the plot device the MacGuffin a goober.
Yeah.
Each one, even Miguel calls it a goober. The new Peter Parker calls it a goober.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those constants across the multiverse. Like I also love the depiction of the multiverse. Like, there's the details in the differences.
Yeah.
Like how in Miles... Like... The washed up Peter Parker is from like the 616 universe, which is our universe. So all his brand names are accurate. They're all. It's got like Coca-Cola advertising.
Yeah.
There's like a Beats by Dre kind of thing. But in the Miles Morales universe, all the brand names are like those weird TV knockoffs that you always see.
Yeah. Yeah, like, there's Nuka-Cola, and also the
Nuka-Cola's from Fallout.
There's also such
I'm
pretty sure it's called Nuka-Cola.
Was it called Nuka-Cola? That's from the Fallout games.
I'm pretty sure. Anyway, whatever.
Whatever.
But also, there was a great part where it shows Times Square and has a lot of different posters. There's one with Seth Rogen on a horse. There's one with Nick Kroll and John Mulaney, and John Mulaney's in the film as well.
Yeah. Because John Mulaney did a stage production called Oh Hello. But in that alternate universe, it's called Hi Hello.
Okay. And there's
little
also
stuff like that.
there's also a movie poster for From Dusk Till Dawn.
That's right. I love stuff like that. I'm going to mention Bioshock Infinite. We were talking about Constants and Variants before. From Dusk Till Dawn was the prospective sequel to Shaun of the Dead.
Yes.
As part of like the Cadetto trilogy back when Simon Pegg, Edgar Wright, and Nick Frost produced those trilogy of films. And that was meant to be a follow-up of Shaun of the Dead. So I like how in Miles' universe, they didn't make Hot Fuzz. They made From Dusk Till Dawn. It reminds me of... This is spoilers for the video game Bioshock Infinite. But Bioshock Infinite also has to do with the multiverse and the different like constants and variables throughout the multiverse. And there's one portion, me and Stefan have talked about this before, when they visit an alternate universe, and it's an alternate Paris in the year 1983. And there's like a theatre marquee for the film Revenge of the Jedi. So the only difference in that universe is that George Lucas released the film with the original intended title for Return of the Jedi. It's just little stuff like that when like just those little decisions that could have kind of changed
and I guess
pop culture.
That also wouldn't be trademarked as well.
Another thing with those multiverses, the more obvious thing is how each of the multiverses has an aesthetic that relates to that Peter. So the one we
not that Peter, but that
Spider-Man. So the one we focus on has that very like graffiti style. There's dots everywhere, screen tones. It looks very
it's almost
artsy.
digital, like it's almost more like streetwise.
Yeah,
than the other
streetwise.
universes.
That's the Miles Morales.
There's more
universe.
like graffiti aesthetics and
Then
tagging.
when I'll say the most
We
obvious
sound so
one.
old talking about like street aesthetics.
Well, it's true
All
though.
the tagging and the kids and the throw it up.
Anyway,
No,
Stefan?
but and then when you see the snippet of Spider-Gwen's universe, and it's literally just her comic covers where it's got
bubbly and airy
pastel
and pink and,
watercolors, and everything has that seeping effect that her covers do.
And Spider-Man Noir's black and
Just
white.
black
I
and
like how
white.
literally like his universe. It's not that we see it in black and white. He's just like there's no
actually-
color in that universe, and he's astounded by color.
And then Spider-Ham's universe is very cartoony as well. In fact, there was a short on the Blu-ray that came with it.
Oh, in the extended cut, the film opens with that short,
Oh, okay.
and it explains where Spider-Ham was like when he gets.
So wasn't
pulled
he a
into the-
spider bit by a pig?
Yeah, which is kind of funny, but kind of gross also,
Yeah.
because he's way more pig than Spider.
Yeah.
Gross. Mop that up. That's
Whatever.
by John Mulaney, everyone. That's my
Thank
bad
you.
impression of the podcast.
Okay, what do you guys think of the storytelling device of, okay, let's back it up?
It's good. It's good. It's just snappy. It's quintessential, like that Lord and Miller
yeah.
kind of meta humor. Every time they introduce a comic cover, it's based on a real comic cover from
Yeah.
the Marvel publications. It's fantastic.
So something that I liked about that was that every time they introduced a new character, they did it, but they did it faster because they knew the audience would get tired of it. It's like, okay, we've been through this, so let's just speed through
Because the
it.
audience can internalize that information quickly after it's already been after you start restating it. So you
Yeah.
don't need to go over it again and again and again. Like you just get the gist of it.
Yeah.
As soon as they go, okay, like let's go over what is it? We'll go over this one more time.
Yeah.
Like you know exactly what the story is.
And I feel I really like how, okay, let's go over this one more time because it's been iterated so many times throughout film history in the past 20 years in our universe.
Yeah.
And also, it's like the comic characters have this history that they're saying, okay, we've said this over and over again, but let's do it one more time for our own audience.
I love, also, kind of off topic, but I also love how the Jake Johnson Spider-Man is basically just the Raimi Spider-Man revisited.
I thought they both have a lot of elements.
He's similar. I didn't say it was the same.
I know, but like the Miles one does the Spider-Man 3 dance.
Does too. Sorry, yeah. The Miles universe, Peter Parker does the.
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was respectful, and it was just there's not an Andrew Garfield reference in sight, but I don't know. It was just like
There wasn't a Tom Holland one either.
I two things I guarantee for the sequel is a Tom Holland cameo and Venom in there somewhere.
Yeah.
That Mr. Avi Arad will put Venom in anything, regardless if it completely compromises the integrity of the film.
Spider-Man 3.
Venom will be. You mark my words. Venom will be in the next one.
I'm surprised how much restraint they showed as well. Also,
I think they didn't have a lot of faith in it because it's very low budgeted. I think that this film wasn't, because it's such a low budget and didn't have high studio expectations. I doubt there was much studio interference, and I think that is a main factor behind just the sheer quality of it.
Also, I want to talk about 2018 in general with Spider-Man content. So, we have 3 Spider-Man properties that came out in 2018 that weren't comics. You had Infinity War, you had the Spider-Man game, PlayStation 4 game, and you had this. All 3 different interpretations, all 3 really well done as well.
I know
would
this
say.
is not really a hot take, but the game and this film are better interpretations than the cinematic universe Spider-Man, I feel.
I would agree with that.
I
haven't even read any of the comics.
The more but you don't have to. Just like you, just through cultural osmosis, you
Yeah.
can just pick up what Spider-Man is like, and he's not like.
And there's also 3
don't know.
depictions of Filson Whisk that year, with being Daredevil
Filson
season.
Whisk.
Sorry, Wilson Fisk.
Yeah.
With Daredevil season 3 and the game and this movie.
This
as well.
one was a really unique one.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the Daredevil one was unique as well, but he's pretty much from 2015 or something like that. He's quite
but like
early
this
on.
one, something I really like about this Wilson Fisk, not Filson Whisk,
His boy.
is
Filson
his
Whisk sounds like a cook.
silhouette. His silhouette is
Oh.
gigantic and massive, and instantly, just like whenever he's in the frame, he
He fills the frame. He's so
There's-
imposing.
And there's that literally one shot where it's literally just his head and a black background.
I love that artistic literalism when it's
Yes.
just how do we make him feel like he fills the frame? We'll make him literally fill the frame.
You know, you were saying about Brad Bird's silhouettes. I'm not sure if it was in this episode
It
or
was
the last
this
one,
yeah.
but he really does feel like a Brad Bird character, especially in that scene where it's near the very end and he's just overshadowing
Yeah.
Miles, and it almost looks like he's at a slant.
Yeah,
And he always walks at a slant.
Yeah, it's like it reminds me of that from Cats Don't Dance. The
the bodyguard.
Because the bodyguard walks with a slant because he looks like he's consciously always trying to hold his weight up, like he's always about to tumble. But I also liked how he was a little bit more like mafioso, a bit more thuggish.
Yeah.
Kingpin's usually more calculating and cold and
like he actually
tactical.
kills Spider-Man himself.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, spoiler. He
also
kills Spider-Man.
It's also a little bit dark.
Yeah.
Like the Prowler dies from just like a gunshot from like a Glock.
Okay, do you want to talk about that relationship there?
Oh, this is gonna be. These are all full spoilers.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I know.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that relationship. So I reckon Miles' relationship with his father and his uncle are really well fleshed out, and like immediately within the first minute of those characters interacting, you understand their relationships, and like the way, like you had the strained one with the father, but a really chilled one with the uncle, and how the uncle does the graffitiing and all the fun stuff, and then like when you get towards the actual drama at the end of the second act, it really, really builds up, and those emotional beats hit really hard, I would say.
I think it's the fact that it's an origin story, and this is what I like and don't like about... Well, not don't like, I love everything about this film, but Miles Morales' it's predictable what's going to happen. Like, I knew from the very start, he's the uncle, he's the Prowler. Even, I think in the comics he was the Prowler, but in this it's very obvious,
His
even if you haven't
character is
seen
the
it.
character from Homecoming, played by Donald Glover.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
That's why that character says he mentions that he doesn't want drugs in the neighborhood. He doesn't want weapons in the neighborhood because he has a nephew.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
That's clever, but now that movie is adequate.
But
The
what was
game
I
is
saying?
so good. You played the game, right?
Yes, I have.
The game is so good.
Yeah, so that's another thing. We in the game we have the different relationship with the father and Miles. I really like how, like, between all the properties of, like, all the non-comic Spider-Man properties in 2018, Into the Spiderverse really separated itself from all that, so it could be its own story that doesn't compare itself with the others.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was really well done.
And it's still, again, it's power and responsibility. That's the crux of that character. And they don't shy away from that just because it's been done before. They find a new and unique way to talk about it.
And I think it's interesting how for most of the film, in order to show that he's trying to become his own Spider-Man, for like the the whole middle portion, he's in a Spider-Man onesie as if he's still trying to be Spider-Man until he becomes his
like
own
he's in
Spider-Man.
over his head. Yeah. He
Yeah.
feels like an imposter, like a juvenile imposter at that. It's great.
Yeah, and you don't even need to explain that. It just works. And it also has one of my favourite Stan Lee cameos.
That's great.
Where he goes, it always fits. It just takes time.
And this was, like, I think, wasn't that, like, just after he passed away as well?
Yeah, I think so.
He passed away. When did he pass away?
In December 2018.
Really? Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was either just after or just before.
It was right near, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you have any thoughts about just like iconography or story or the stuff you enjoyed?
I enjoyed all of it. It was really good.
In terms of what I love about this film that I didn't even talk about at all was dynamic composition. Like, there's something about having your composition start with the leg of a character's leg right up to the edge of the camera that makes it feel like it has kinetic energy. Like, there's so many sweeping shots and there's so much movement of the camera. Like, there's parts where the camera sweeps along with the characters as they're swinging. Like, you don't get that in the live action movies. You just can't. But in this, you can get that. You get that real sense of motion and energy, and it's just spectacular most of the time.
Actually, something about this. Another Spider-Man game thing. I keep mentioning it, but they have the Activision Spider-Man suit in Peter Parker's den.
The white one is in the spider
Actually,
cave or
I
whatever.
really appreciated all those Easter eggs there as well, because there's a lot of costumes there, and yeah, it's a very subtle plug for the game.
There's a lot of Easter eggs in there. When Miles is scrolling through his phone, you can see Brian Michael Bendis in the contacts.
It wasn't Steve Ditko in there as well?
I think Ditko was as well. Bendis, there's like a shop front called Bendis's or something like that. Just little stuff, but we like we said, we just love the energy.
Yeah, we can't really say much more apart from that we love it.
I know. Like, kudos to it for introducing a piece of visual iconography into the already saturated with visual iconography Spider-Man canon. Which is that scene. Can we talk a little bit about, just quickly, the scene where Miles takes a leap of faith and jumps off the building?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
it is.
That is completely ruined in the alternate cut, by the way.
Oh, is it? What happens in it?
You know how he takes a leap of faith and it's like a big emotional scene and he swings through the city and he's really kind of getting his shit together?
Yeah.
It intercuts it when he does a leap of faith in the extended cut. He swings down and he hits a truck.
Oh.
Oh, what?
Yeah, and the music stops like a record scratch hard cut.
I'm glad they decided to cut that then.
And like it's funny, but like that completely undermines the just
The story.
just the resonance of that scene. But yeah, just like from seeing it like at that Comic-Con or whenever it was the footage was initially released, just I don't know, man. Just
It's good.
It looked unique and it looked just absolutely groundbreaking and almost like just an auteur animation. It just looked amazing, and I'm glad we got something as unique, as this in a genre at the moment that's kind of stagnating, even though it's still making billions and billions of dollars.
Well, hooray for Spider-Man.
Thank you, Sony, for making the best Spider-Man movie in the past decade and a half, and it turned out to be a cartoon.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the end.
Stop.
'Cause we have to wrap up quickly. So if you want to contact us, we are at animate3pod@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook and YouTube and on Twitter. And with Twitter, I constantly update it with animation news, which we won't be doing on this podcast anymore because we always run out of time somehow. Okay, and that is the end of the podcast. We'll see you next week where we're going to be watching the Peanuts movie from 2015. Goodbye, everyone.